Hey Dragon Slayers! Today's video is all about how to braise and why I personally rarely do it. So braising starts out identical to pan searing because you add the protein to a heavy cast iron pot over high heat to brown the meat surface and enhance its flavor. The difference is that you are using a larger, thicker protein that would never cook all the way through with pan searing alone. Instead, you sear all the surfaces of your protein over high heat and then add some finishing liquid, cooking the meat in a covered pot over a lower heat for a much longer period of time. Braising relies on time and moisture to break down tough connective tissue, or collagen, that binds muscle fibers and meat together, making it an ideal way to cook larger and tougher cuts of meats. Slow cooking crockpots are basically forms of braising. All braises follow the same basic steps. And here's a basic template for braising anything. Start with a large, inexpensive cut of meat, a chuck, shank, brisket, short rib, bottom round. Any of these are great. Heat a small amount of avocado oil in a heavy Dutch oven. Enamel cast iron is excellent. And you're just going to heat this. Then, when the oil is very hot, add the meat and brown for a minute or two on all sides, flipping with the tongs. Remember the meat, remove the meat and set it aside. Lower the heat to medium for bonus flavor. You could throw in some aromatic vegetables like chopped onions, carrots, celery, and garlic. At this stage, saute them for a few minutes, but you can skip that step. It's optional. I think you should if you want to braise because it's going to add a ton more flavor. Deglaze the pan with a cup or two of some flavorful liquid, such as a broth, scraping the tasty burned bits from the bottom of the pan. That adds even more flavor. Return the meat to the pot along with some acidic ingredient like diced tomatoes, a splash of wine, or a few tablespoons of vinegar. The acid helps break down the tough connective tissues in the meat as well. Now it's time to cover the pot with a tight fitting lid and simmer the meat for 1 to 5 hours, depending upon the size of your protein, typically about an hour per pound. You can either simmer it on top of the stove on medium to low heat, just enough heat to keep the water below the boiling point with some very gentle bubbling, but nothing that resembles a full aggressive boil. Or you can put it in the oven, set it to 300 degrees, and this will have the same effect. You will know when your meat is cooked because it will be fork tender. Remove the protein from the pot to rest for a few minutes, and in the meantime, boil the remaining liquid in the pot over high heat to thicken it until you have a less watery consistency. And you can use that as a gravy of sorts to pour over. You can also throw some root vegetables into your braising pot just prior to the slow cooking simmer. Carrots are the most popular, but you could also try beets, potatoes, radishes, rutabaga, sweet potatoes, or turnips. I think Ted Naiman goes over very well like how to braise. I think that's very accurate. The reason why I rarely do this is because I don't enjoy the texture of braised meats, with very few exceptions. So, one exception is barbacoa. I love barbacoa. If I have any Mexican food lovers out there, you'll know what I mean. It's essentially meat from the head of a cow. There's classic barbacoa that usually comes from goat. But the cheap or the poor man's barbacoa, the more common version is just the beef cheeks. They are so good. I love braised barbacoa. Another example is probably that might be the only example of braised meat I like. Oh, osobuku. That's another good example that I personally love. So that's lamb or veal shank. So it's like the bottom ankle portion of the calf. and that's also an excellent meat to braise. Other than that, I don't really enjoy the texture. When it comes to roast, I would much prefer to smoke it. I think that smoking is the best way to cook basically every type of meat. So I will do my own video on smoking for you guys later on, coming up, but I'm going to keep going through the series because it's important to me to present the information to you as Ted Naiman presents it, and then I'll add my own spin and my own twist here and there. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, you can support me with Patreon in the description down below. And together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.